Alright, so I've made a couple crappy tutorials on purpose, so I'm going to make a kind of okay one on purpose. What spurred this on is I saw a pretty not good tutorial on how to do a custom thumbnail, so I want to try and make an okay one. Alright, so I'm going to try and show you how to make thumbnails that are somewhat legible, hopefully halfway decent, and hopefully are an eyesore to look at. And there's a couple of different ways we could do this. The first way is we can actually make a thumbnail out of a part of our video. And the reason you would want to do this is because maybe YouTube doesn't give you the thumbnail you want. So here's Brett Jones' Bizarre Adventure. And let's say I decided that this particular frame here is great for a thumbnail. Now, most editing software will let you do this. You can just click down here for Premiere Pro. You might have to find it somewhere else. Sometimes you don't have to. Sony Vegas also has this feature where you could just export a frame and you will have a still image of that part of the video. So what we do after that is we are going to drag it right into Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop. Anybody out there can use GIMP or Paint.net or whatever Photoshop alternative you wish to use. It's up to you. Those two programs have a lot of the same functionalities as Photoshop anyway. It just so happens that Photoshop is those two programs on steroids. Anyhow, this is all I want in a custom thumbnail for this particular video, for this example. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save as, and I'm going to save it as a PNG. And this is important, and I'll explain why later. So I've already got a file there, so it's going to ask me to overwrite. I'm going to say yes. Another thing you definitely want to make sure of, too, is when you go to your image size, you want to make sure it's at a resolution of 72. That's important because all web images default to 72 resolutions. There's no need to have it any higher than this. One reason why you would make it lower is maybe so you can make the file size lower. You have to remember that for YouTube thumbnails, you always have to have a file size of 2 megabytes. Alright, so let's say I want to add a little bit of text, and that comes into a second way of doing our custom thumbnails, is we could add a little stuff to them, because that's the whole point of having a custom thumbnail, isn't it? Is, to add stuff. So what I'm going to do for this next example is I'm just going to have a bit of the video as well as a little bit of text to kind of anyhow. So I'm going to use one Toho video I made as an example. Now I can pick any frame from this, and on its own, it's not going to look too interesting unless you kind of get the game. But it's not going to look. These are just still frames. It's not as interesting as actually seeing the video. So I've already picked out my frame for this one. So I'm going to close this. We're going to use this frame that I've already picked out. I think it looks pretty neat, and this is the stage 4 fight with Satori. Anyhow, so what I want to do here is I want to add a little bit of text. And one of the important things for the text is we want to make sure that it's kind of relevant to what's going on in our video. Now, there's a couple different ways you can approach this. And the way I'm going to do it for this tutorial, because I'm not going to be there to hold your hand when you do this yourself, so you're going to have to come up with your own shit. But the thing is, I can at least kind of show you what I like to do. So I'm going to take some text. I'm going to make something that sounds relevant. So since I'm playing as Marissa B in this video, I'll type Marissa B 1cc, and I'm going to make my color white. You want to pick a color that's not really ugly, because if it's really ugly, you're going to deter people from ever watching your video, because nobody wants to see a really ugly font. And there are some really crappy fonts out there. I spelled 1cc wrong. That's amazing, isn't it? Alright. So I've got Marissa B 1cc. Now, I'm making it that large because it's got to be viewable and legible while it's very small. And I'm going to give you an example of just how small it's got to be viewable from. You might think that's overkill with how small it's got to look for you to get a good idea of what it's going to look like on YouTube, but that's actually pretty damn close. Alright, so I'm going to zoom back in so I can see it a little better. Now, you may have noticed that my text, it's big. It's big enough that you can read it when it's small, but it's not the most legible thing in the world. A couple things we can do. We can make it a little bigger, and one of the ways we can do that is we can either increase the font point up here, or I could just make the text bigger, and that's all I'm going to do is just make the text bigger and apply that transformation. But there's still something wrong here, because even though the text is bigger, it's a little bit more legible. But the thing is, there's stuff going on in the image, and there's bright colors. It's not too distinguishable. And that's the thing I like about white, is that it's distinguishable from most colors, but because there are bright colors in this particular image, it's not going to work out so well. So one of the ways I can make this a little bit more legible is to go down here to my effects and add a little stroke. Some people don't really like stroke, but I like stroke. Talking about Photoshop effect, not, you know, the brain thing. Anyway, I don't know if GIMP or Paint.net has an equivalent to stroke. It probably does. I can't think of any reason why it wouldn't. But even if it doesn't, I'm pretty sure that people who use those programs regularly can come up with a clever alternative. So I'm going to go with 20 because that looks nice and thick. So when I back out of this a bit more now, we can see it's a tiny bit more legible because we have that little black outline, and that kind of distinguishes the white lettering from the brightly colored bullets on the screen. Now, maybe this isn't enough for you. Maybe you need something else to spice up your thumbnail. So maybe because I'm playing as Marissa, I'll put a picture of Marissa in there that I've already prepared. And I could just drag this over here and make this bigger and pull it over here some more. And I'm also going to make sure that it's behind the text. That way the text is still legible. You want to remember, you don't want it anywhere near this area that I'm highlighting. And that's because that's where the video length is going to be on the thumbnail when it's on the list on YouTube itself. You don't want anything in this particular area. Alright. So, you notice I brought a picture into the mix. This was supposed to be just text. Well, this kind of touches on the other thing we could do. The last thing we could do is we can make a thumbnail that's very obviously a custom thumbnail. Now, this is pretty close to a obvious custom thumbnail. But it's completely relevant, and it's got an image of the video itself. But how do I make a thumbnail for a video like this? And the answer to that question is to do the same thing that you see on, like, you know, most kind of Minecraft videos, or think of like one of Tobuscus or PewDiePie's videos. They always have like these custom thumbnails that look like they kind of go all out on making a custom thumbnail. Like, they look like they spent some time in Photoshop getting their templates down and having a whole bunch of stuff to do. So we're going to give that a shot too. That's another way we can do a custom thumbnail. So I'm going to close this, but first remember you're going to save it. You're going to save as, and you're going to want to save it as a PNG. And again, I already have saved a version of this. I'm going to save it, and I'll replace it because, yeah, why not? So I'm going to close this now, and then we're not going to save. So we're going to make a custom thumbnail, and most obvious way we do that is we go File, New, and we'll just put in our specifications for the file. So we're going to make this 1920 by 1080. Going to keep the resolution at 72. 8-bit and 16-bit probably don't really matter, but I personally like to have it at 16-bit. I don't know why. It's just a thing in my head. So now, this image is already proportioned to a screen, and a thumbnail isn't really that far off from being the same proportion as a screen. It's a tiny bit smaller in width, but that's negligible. Anyhow, so I want to make a thumbnail for this video. So let's make a thumbnail for this video. I've got, amusingly enough, an image of Photoshop. So I'm going to take this image of Photoshop, and I'm going to get rid of the irrelevant stuff. Alright, so I have an image of Photoshop. I've also got an image from Gary's mod, which we're going to have in here. I'm going to double click my background layer so I can use it. Put a transparent layer right underneath that. And we're just going to use... Oh, I didn't select a layer. Whoops. And we're going to use Magic Wand tool to get rid of all this green. Essentially, it's the Photoshop equivalent of a green screen. And it works well enough, so it's fine. So now we have this transparency. I can very easily just select and copy it. So I'm going to make a new layer, paste. Going to have this dude over here because he's all fucking excited about this thumbnail tutorial. Look at this guy. All right. Enter to apply the transformation. And now I'm going to put some text, and I'm going to put custom thumb, and a lot of things you'll notice on the YouTubes, they always suggest that you put the word tutorial like really big. And the reason you do that is so you can get the person's attention and get the message across that this is a tutorial. That only works for this kind of thing, so, you know. Anyhow, so I'm just going to do the same thing. Going to make tutorial a little bigger, though, actually. That's fine. Alright. I'm going to maybe... We're going to maybe angle it just a little bit. Because, yeah, that'll work. That'll work perfectly. Apply that transformation. We're going to come to custom thumb and going to line break. Going to pull the word thumb up a little bit. I'm not sure if you could do something like this in Paint.net or GIMP, although you probably can. Those programs might have some typography in them. I'm only doing it to fit this in and make it look all nice. You don't necessarily have to do this part. But again, this one This method is a bit more design oriented, so you might want to take the time to actually do stuff like that. So again, I like stroke. I call it stroke. So I'm going to give this one a stroke 20 just to make it a little stand out a little bit from the gray up here. And I'm going to do the same for tutorial since it comes over here. And so tutorial is also going to get a little bit of stroke. Okay. And you know what? I think I even feel like pulling the word tutorial down a bit. Now, you might be thinking, where are you going with that word tutorial? It's getting close to that corner. But this is about the amount of space we have to work with. It's still pretty much in the safe zone. So I'm going to back out a little bit. We're going to see if this makes sense at a very small size. And it looks like it does. Although, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the rest of the word thumbnail to thumbnail, because there's enough space for that. And it still makes perfect sense. Although, maybe, and this is just a little bit of a personal touch, I want to add a little bit something extra to this guy here, because he's in kind of gray, drab looking clothing, and he kind of blends in and meshes in with the Photoshop gray. So I'm gonna add a little bit of glow, maybe some drop shadow to him. So let's look at the effects we can add to this guy. All right, so we can give him some stroke, although I don't really want to give him some stroke. We can give him some outer glow. And I think I'll go with outer glow. What color of outer glow should we give him? I'm going to give him a kind of maybe like a bluish color, because maybe that'll stand out a bit. Nice lightish blue. Going to zoom in a little bit more so we can see this better. We're going to make the size a little bigger. Bump that right up to 10. Gonna have it spread a bit. Make it a little bigger. Alright. Turn the opacity up a bit. And you know what? We'll make it even bigger. Turn the spread up even a little bit more. Now he's got some nice little glow to him. He stands out from the rest of the image. And when we pull back, the thumbnail still makes sense. You can make him out from the Photoshop, and the text is legible. So what we do now is we save as, and we save as PNG. Sorry, I blanked out a bit there. I'm going to save this as toot thumbnail.png, and we're going to save. I'm going to hit OK. So, another couple things you're going to want to know. So you want to come to your channel settings, and you're going to come down here. Right here is where you got your custom thumbnails. I have already got access to custom thumbnails. If you don't, you'll have an enable button right there, and you should have it so long as your account is in good standing. So the way we can add a custom thumbnail to a video is pretty simple. What we'll do is we'll take a video. We'll take the Brett Jones Bizarre Adventure video. We'll re-upload that. Why not? Testy test. Okay. So, let's say I want to take one of these custom thumbnails I've made. So I'm going to browse for it. Custom thumbnail. Thumbnail toot. I'll go to all out. And I'll use the thumbnail we just made. Now, if it's not lower than 2 megabytes, it's not going to work. Default error. Try again. Alright, so that means it's not going to work. The problem is this. This is more than 2 megabytes. It needs to be under 2 megabytes. So there's a couple ways we can fix this. Even though we've done everything else, we've saved this PNG, and PNG has a smaller file size, and we've also kept it at 72 resolution because there's no need to be any higher because that makes a bigger file size. So what else can we do? Well, we can go right back to that image size. We can make the resolution smaller. So I'm going to go down to 60. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go down a little bit more. I'm going to go down to 55. Now you got to remember, it doesn't really matter how it looks at 100% because this is how big it is at 100%. That does not matter. What matters is that it's under 2 megabytes and it's still legible and everything. So I'm going to save over this. And we'll give it a second to save, and we'll take a look at the file size now. And the file size now is 1.4 megabytes. So that's under 2 megabytes, meaning we can come here, and this time it should work. And there it goes. Another thing that's good to know is that we can also change our thumbnails after we've uploaded the video. I'm sure everyone already knows this, but still a good thing to know. So we can change the thumbnail to a different custom thumbnail. And we'll just go to simple screen cap. We'll go to this first one we made. We'll make it that. That's all there is to it. So I saw a tutorial that wasn't that great. I tried to make a tutorial that was a little better, and I hope this helps. Of course I can't really kind of help you the entire way because, you know, it's your own video and you got to make your own design choices. But I do hope that this can serve as good guidance. You know, I hope this helps, and have fun.